In 2021, Pakistan believed it had won in Afghanistan. The United States withdrew. A hostile pro-Western government in Kabul collapsed. The Taliban, a movement Pakistan had long maintained ties with, returned to power. Strategic depth had finally been restored. But just a few years later, Pakistan is facing one of the most dangerous security environments it has seen in over a decade. Militant attacks are rising. Border violence is escalating. And the very forces Islamabad once saw as assets are now limiting its options. This is the story of how Pakistan's Afghanistan strategy backfired. The doctrine in Islamabad was meant to be one of strategic depth. To understand the crisis, you have to understand a concept that shaped Pakistani security thinking for decades: strategic depth. Pakistan has always viewed itself as geographically constrained. India to the east, Afghanistan to the west, a narrow territorial spine. The logic was simple. If conflict with India escalated, Pakistan needed a friendly western frontier, not a hostile one. From the anti-Soviet jihad of the 1980s to the rise of the Taliban in the 1990s, and through the post-9/11 era, influence in Afghanistan became embedded in Pakistani doctrine. A friendly Kabul meant no Indian encirclement, reduced Western pressure, strategic breathing space. For years, Islamabad believed influence would translate into leverage. In 2021, that belief appeared validated. But influence is not the same as control. The blowback? It was the resurgence of the TTP. The Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan, the TTP, has re-emerged as a serious threat. Attacks have increased. Operations are more coordinated. Safe havens across the border complicate counter-terrorism efforts. The Afghan Taliban and the TTP share ideological roots, networks, and decades of interaction. Islamabad expected at minimum restraint. Instead, the Taliban leadership has prioritized Afghan nationalism and internal cohesion over Pakistani security concerns. From Kabul's perspective, acting decisively against the TTP risks internal fractures. Appearing to bow to Islamabad undermines legitimacy. The result is a strategic paradox. The forces Pakistan once cultivated to secure its western flank now constrain it. This is not just a terrorism problem. It is a doctrine problem. While Pakistan struggles, another actor has moved carefully back into Afghanistan: India. New Delhi has adopted a low-profile, pragmatic strategy: humanitarian assistance, diplomatic engagement, technical cooperation. India has reopened channels with the Taliban government and hosted senior representatives. This is not a military return. Geography limits that. But diplomatically, India gains influence at minimal cost. For Pakistan's security establishment, this triggers a familiar fear: encirclement. Whether that fear is overstated or not is secondary. Perception drives strategy. And perception in Islamabad is shifting. What we are seeing now is a shrinking strategic menu. Pakistan now faces difficult choices. Option 1. Escalation. Cross-border strikes. Coercive pressure. Signaling resolve. But escalation risks pushing Kabul and anti-Pakistan groups closer together. Option 2. Economic leverage. Border closures. Trade restrictions. Transit limitations. But Afghanistan has adapted to isolation before. Option 3. Strategic reset. Accept Afghanistan as autonomous. Reduce coercion. Build economic interdependence. This would require revisiting decades of doctrine. Institutionally and politically, that is extremely difficult. Meanwhile, internal fragility, economic stress, political polarization, institutional strain reduces Pakistan's margin for error. External stability is difficult when domestic stability is uncertain. But the geopolitical environment has also changed. The United States is less present. Regional actors, including China, Gulf states, and Turkey, prioritize stability but avoid direct confrontation. No external power is prepared to fundamentally reshape Taliban behavior on Pakistan's behalf. This is the first major test of South Asia's post-Western regional order. And Pakistan no longer holds the same leverage it once assumed it did. But there is a bigger structural dilemma. What we are witnessing is not a temporary flare-up. It is a structural transition. For decades, Pakistan relied on influence networks and proxy relationships to manage its western frontier. That model is under strain. The end of strategic depth does not mean strategic defeat, but it does mean something more difficult: accepting that control is no longer guaranteed. Pakistan now faces a generational choice: continue coercive management of Afghanistan, or adapt to coexistence in a more autonomous, multipolar region. What replaces strategic depth will shape Pakistan's security for decades, and the outcome is still uncertain.